The invisible voice that changed humanity, the astonishing true story of radio, the night of voice, crossed the OCA on December 24, 1906. Christmas Eve. In the freezing waters of the North Atlantic Ocean, dozens of ships drifted silently under a sky full of stars. The sailors on board were used to the lonely sounds of the sea, the wind against the masts, waves crashing against metal hulls, and the distant cries of SEABIRDS. Communication between ships at that time was crude. Operators tapped out coded signals, using Morse code, short beeps and long beeps, traveling through invisible electromagnetic waves. Suddenly something strange happened. The operators wearing their headphones froze. Instead of the familiar dots and dashes, they heard a human voice, a clear voice. Then music. A violin began to play. One operator reportedly ripped off his headphones in shock and stared at them as if they were haunted. Another ran across the deck shouting. Sailors gathered around. The voice continued. Good evening. This is a special broadcast for anyone listening. For the first time in human history, a voice traveled through the air across miles of ocean without wires. No messenger. No telegraph line. No physical connection. Just invisible waves moving through space. That moment changed civilization forever. It was the birth of radio broadcasting. But the story of radio did not begin in 1906. It began thousands of years earlier. With curiosity about invisible forces in nature, the ancient mystery of invisible forces is long before electricity. Before modern science, before industrial civilization, humans were fascinated by strange invisible forces. Around 600 BCE, the Greek philosopher Thales of Miletus noticed something unusual. When he rubbed amber with cloth, it attracted small pieces of straw and feathers. It looked like magic. People believed mysterious spirits lived inside objects they didn't yet understand electricity. But that small observation would eventually lead humanity toward wireless communication. Centuries passed. The mystery remained unsolved. For more than 2,000 years, no one fully understood electricity or magnetism, yet these forces quietly existed everywhere in nature. Lightning storms. Magnetic rocks. The earth itself acting like a giant magnet. These invisible forces were waiting for curious minds to unlock their secrets. The man who discovered electromagnetic waves. Forward to the 19th century, industrialization was transforming Europe and America. Steam engines powered trains, factories filled cities with smoke. But scientists were beginning to uncover deeper laws of nature. One of the most brilliant among them was James Clerk Maxwell. In 1864, Maxwell proposed something revolutionary. He mathematically proved that electricity and magnetism were connected. Even more astonishing, he predicted that electromagnetic waves could travel through space. Invisible waves moving at the speed of light. These waves could theoretically carry signals, but there was a problem. No one had ever seen these waves. Many scientists doubted Maxwell's theory. They believed it was just mathematics. Not reality. Then a young German physicist decided to test it. His name was Heinrich Hertz. In 1887, Hertz performed a groundbreaking experiment. He built a simple electrical device that produced sparks across the room. He placed a metal loop with a tiny gap. When the spark jumped in the transmitter, another tiny spark appeared in the loop. No wires connected them. Energy had traveled through the air. Hertz had proven Maxwell correct. Electromagnetic waves were real. Today we call them radio waves. At the time, however, Hertz believed the discovery had no practical use. He famously said, "This is just an experiment that proves Maxwell was right. I see no application for it." History would prove him spectacularly wrong. The race to build wireless communication EON. Once Hertz proved radio waves existed, scientists across the world began experimenting with them. But one young inventor became obsessed with the idea. His name was Guglielmo Marconi. Marconi was not a famous scientist. He was a curious young man working in his family's attic in Italy during the 1890s. He had a simple dream: to send messages through the air without wires. At the time, communication depended on telegraph cables, stretched across continents and oceans. These cables were expensive and fragile. If Marconi succeeded, Communication could become instant and global. His early experiments were crude. He used basic transmitters, antennas and receivers built from simple electrical parts. At first, the signal traveled only a few meters, then a few hundred meters, then several kilometers. By 1895, Marconi successfully transmitted a wireless signal across hills in Italy. The signal traveled over 2 kilometers. This was revolutionary, but Italian officials were unimpressed. They did not understand the significance. So Marconi traveled to England. That decision would change the world. The first radio SYSTEM in 1896. Marconi arrived in London carrying his strange equipment. British engineers were skeptical, but when he demonstrated wireless telegraphy, they were stunned. Signals traveled across the air without wires. Within a few years, Marconi established the Marconi Company. Wireless stations began appearing across Europe. Ships at sea adopted the technology first. For sailors, it was revolutionary. Before radio, ships that encountered trouble had almost no way to call for help. Now, they could send distress signals. Radio quickly became essential for maritime safety. The technology improved rapidly. Signals traveled farther and farther. Then Marconi attempted something no one thought possible, sending a signal across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1901, from Cornwall in England, he transmitted a signal to Newfoundland in Canada. 3 tiny Morse code beeps. The letter S. It was the first transatlantic wireless signal in history. The world had suddenly become smaller, but radio was about to become much more powerful. Because someone had a new idea. Instead of sending Morse code, what if radio could transmit human voices? The first voice ever BRO8CST. That idea came from a brilliant Canadian inventor named Reginald Fessenden. Fessenden believed radio should carry sound, music, and speech. Most scientists thought it was impossible, but Fessenden persisted. After years of experimentation, he developed a new transmitter capable of modulating radio waves. Then came that historic night, December 24, 1906. Fessenden made the first radio broadcast in history. Instead of Morse code, he played violin. Then he read a passage from the Bible. Operators across the Atlantic heard it. Many were shocked. Some thought it was a miracle. The age of radio broadcasting had begun. The night radio saved lives. The Titanic disaster, April 14, 1912. The Atlantic Ocean was calm that night. The sky was perfectly clear, filled with countless stars that reflected off the dark water like scattered diamonds. A giant ship cut through the ocean. The pride of modern engineering. The largest moving object humans had ever built. Its name was RMS Titanic. At the time, the Titanic represented the height of technological confidence. Engineers believed it was practically unsinkable. It carried luxury beyond imagination: grand staircases, electric lighting, heated swimming pools, libraries, and elegant dining halls. More than 2,200 passengers and crew were on board. Among them were some of the richest people in America and Europe. But hidden inside the ship was a relatively new technology that most passengers barely noticed: wireless radio. 2 radio operators worked inside a small cabin filled with buzzing equipment and coils of wire. They were employees of the Marconi Company. Their job was to send and receive Morse code messages using wireless telegraphy. One operator was Jack Phillips, the other was Harold Bride. For hours they transmitted passengers' personal messages to shore stations. But that night, several nearby ships sent warnings: ice ahead, large icebergs floating in the shipping lanes. Many of those warnings never reached the Titanic's bridge in time. Then, at 11:40 p.m., something happened. A sudden vibration, a scraping sound along the side of the hull. The Titanic had struck an iceberg. At first, many passengers did not understand the danger. But below deck, icy seawater began pouring into the ship's compartments. Engineers quickly realized the terrifying truth. The ship was doomed. That's when radio became the only hope. Inside the wireless room, Jack Phillips began transmitting a distress signal. CQD. It meant all stations distress. Soon after, He switched to a newer distress signal. SOS. The message spread across the ocean. Nearby ships heard it. One of them was the RMS Carpathia. Its captain immediately changed course and raced toward the Titanic through dangerous ice fields. For hours, Phillips continued sending distress messages as the ship slowly sank. At 2:20 a.m. The Titanic disappeared beneath the freezing Atlantic. More than 1,500 people died. But because of radio communication, the Carpathia arrived in time to rescue about 700 survivors. Without radio, every single person might have died. The tragedy shocked the world. But it also proved something crucial. Wireless radio was not just a scientific curiosity. It was a life-saving technology. After the disaster, governments passed new laws requiring ships to carry radio equipment and maintain 24-hour radio watch. Radio was becoming essential to modern civilization. And its influence was about to explode. America discovers radio during the early 1920s. Something extraordinary happened in the United States. Radio moved from ships and laboratories into ordinary homes. At first, people built their own receivers using simple components, coils, crystals, and headphones. These early devices were called crystal radios. They required no electricity. No batteries. Just a long antenna wire and a ground connection. The signals traveled through the air and were converted directly into sound. Families gathered around headphones to hear faint broadcasts, but radio technology improved quickly. One of the first major radio stations in America was KDKA on November 2, 1920. KDKA made history. It broadcast the results of the U.S. presidential election between Warren G. Harding and James M. Cox. For the first time, people received live election results in their homes through radio. It felt like magic. News traveled instantly. Within just a few years, radio stations spread across America. Music, sports, comedy, drama, news. The airwaves became alive with voices. By the mid-1920s, millions of Americans owned radio sets. Living rooms became gathering places where families listened together every evening. Radio had created the first true mass media. The golden age of radio, the 1930s and 1940s, became known as the golden age of radio. During this time, radio was the center of entertainment and information. Every night, families sat around their large wooden radio cabinets. They listened to live orchestras. Comedy shows, mystery dramas. News reports. One of the most famous moments in radio history happened on October 30th, 1938. That night, a young director named Orson Welles performed a radio drama based on the novel The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The show was presented as a series of fake news bulletins describing a Martian invasion of Earth. Many listeners missed the introduction, explaining it was fiction. They believed the invasion was real. Across America, panic spread. Some people fled their homes. Others called police stations and newspapers. It was one of the most powerful demonstrations of radio's influence. A single broadcast could affect millions of people instantly. Radio had become a powerful force in society. Radio during World War II. When World War II began, radio became one of the most important technologies in the world. Armies used radio for battlefield communication. Airplanes coordinated attacks through radio signals. Naval fleets depended on radio to navigate vast oceans. But radio also played a crucial role in informing civilians. Millions of Americans followed the war through broadcasts from legendary reporters like Edward R. Murrow. Murrow reported live from London during the German bombing campaign known as the Blitz. His calm voice became a symbol of truth and courage. Radio also spread propaganda. Governments realized that controlling information could influence entire populations, yet despite its dangers, radio brought the world closer together. For the first time in history, people could hear global events unfold in real time. The invention that made radio portable for decades. Radios were large pieces of furniture. Heavy. Bulky. Expensive. Then a revolutionary invention changed everything. In 1947, scientists at Bell Labs created the transistor. The invention was developed by John Bardeen, Walter Brattain, and William Shockley. Transistors replaced large vacuum tubes. The They were tiny, efficient, durable. Soon companies began producing transistor radios. For the first time, people could carry radios in their pockets. Teenagers listened to rock and roll music on beaches, in cars, and in schoolYards. Radio became mobile, personal, intimate. This tiny invention helped spark the modern electronics revolution. Radio in space. By the late 20th century, radio technology had expanded far beyond Earth. Space missions depended on radio communication. When Apollo 11 moon landing carried humans to the moon, radio signals transmitted the historic words of Neil Armstrong. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Those words traveled nearly 400,000 kilometers through space using radio waves. Billions of people heard them on Earth. Radio had become humanity's voice across the cosmos. Radio in the digital age. Today, radio exists in many forms. AM radio, FM radio, satellite radio, internet radio, digital audio broadcasting, two-way radio systems, aircraft communication systems, emergency communication networks. Modern services like Spotify and Apple Music even evolved from technologies originally developed for radio broadcasting. Radio waves also power GPS navigation, Wi-Fi networks, mobile phones, Bluetooth devices, satellite communication. In reality, the modern wireless world is built on the same fundamental technology discovered by Hertz more than a century ago. The future of radio may be even more astonishing. Scientists are developing advanced radio technologies for deep space communication, quantum networks, and interplanetary internet. Future spacecraft traveling to Mars or beyond will rely on radio systems to communicate with Earth. Researchers are also exploring ultra-high frequency radio waves for faster wireless communication. Even artificial intelligence systems will depend on wireless networks rooted in radio technology. From primitive sparks in a laboratory to voices crossing oceans to signals traveling between planets, radio has become one of humanity's most powerful inventions. The invisible thread of and radio is something we rarely think about today. It is invisible, silent, everywhere, yet it quietly connects the entire world. The technology that began with curious experiments about electricity now powers global communication, from emergency rescue operations to music in our cars. From aviation safety to space exploration. Radio waves carry the voices, ideas, and knowledge of humanity across the planet and beyond. And the most astonishing part, the air around us right now is filled with countless signals. Music, news, navigation, data, spacecraft transmissions. All traveling invisibly through space. An invisible web of information surrounding the Earth, a technology born from curiosity that ultimately connected the entire human civilization.